Hello, my name is Amy, and I am a little over a 5-year cancer survivor now. I was 42 years old when I was diagnosed, thought that I was perfectly healthy, always went and had my physicals done. Physicals always came out great. So this really hit me kind of out of left field. But I found a lump and I had gone in to have that checked out, thinking it was going to be nothing. And I was actually in the middle of a training in an orthodontic practice. And I stepped outside during a break to take a phone call. And it was my doctor letting me know that the biopsy had come back and it did show cancer. And at that point, I think my head was just kind of swimming. I just put a smile back on my face and went back in and finished working. And so in the days to follow, my husband had been out of town, and thankfully my mom had come to visit. So she was there with me, and my husband came back the next day. And the conversation started of, where do we go from here? What does treatment look like, or what do we even do? This was something that we really weren't even prepared for. So at that point, we started talking, and I happened to have a really close friend that had been working for cancer treatment centers, I think at that point, maybe a couple of years. And she always talked about that facility and the great things about it. And, she would let us know if we ever knew someone that needed treatment, to let her know. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, you're thinking, I won't know anybody that needs that. And so anyway, fast forward, I had just been diagnosed, and at that point she did call, and we were talking through everything, and she just said, look, Amy, you really need to just consider this place. I'm not going to try to make your decision for you, but I'm telling you, it's a fantastic place. Just at least talk to them. So I agreed to talk to them, and I received my first phone call very quickly. First I had to provide my information, but once all of that was done and insurance was accepted, I received my first phone call. And I remember from that very first phone call thinking, wow, the person who called me, I never met, didn't know anything about, but proceeded to talk to me on the phone for such a long time, as if it was somebody I knew. And he explained so much to me. At that time, I didn't know anything about different types of cancer. I'd never heard triple negative or estrogen positive or any of those types of terms or descriptions rather. So I didn't know what I was even hearing on the other end, but he took the time to explain everything to me. And so I hung up the phone and I told my husband, I was like, okay, this is where I want to go. Just from that phone call initially, I knew that, this was a great place. So they called to schedule my appointments. And my first appointment was at 7 a.m. in the morning. And we had a 9th grader at the time and a 6th grader at the time that had to be off to school. So I told my husband, I was like, I will be fine. I'm going to go in, you just take the kids to school, and then you can come meet me. And I got there at 7 a.m. that morning, and my friend who worked there, her shift didn't start until 9, was standing in the doorway waiting on me. And which that makes me emotional, but she'll never know how much that meant to me. But she went to that appointment with me, and then my husband showed up. And I remember when the physician's assistant proceeded to explain to me what type of cancer I had, and she used the terms triple negative. And that's when the tears kind of started flowing, because thankfully I knew what that meant from that initial phone call conversation. And I remember my friend and my husband looking at me like, what's going on? Like, what just happened? Why are you upset? And they're getting upset. But basically that was knowledge I had, thankfully, because of that initial phone call that I've received. So again, just another reassurance of, wow, I'm very impressed with all of this. And so we were ready to get started with treatment. We met with our oncology team, and the one thing I remember my friend telling me is the great thing about this place is that you'll have, you know, several different doctors. You're not going to have to go to this building to see this doctor or to another building to see this doctor. You won't have to remember what appointments on what day because everything's in one place. And I loved that. And the other thing that she said to me is they also meet and they discuss you. So everybody that's coming in contact with you and your care, they're discussing that so that they're all on the same page. And so I really remember that because we were in an appointment. My husband, unfortunately, had lost his mother to breast cancer. That had been several years before, but obviously this, you know, having his wife with breast cancer now had opened up some new wounds. And so we were sitting in an appointment one day with Dr. Johnson. And I remember her talking to me and we were just having a conversation. She had her chair pulled up to me and all of a sudden she says, "Excuse me." And she asked me to pause for a moment and she slides her chair over to my husband and she says to him, "Are you okay?" And that moment I knew that this really was a family. So sorry. That just really meant the world to us, that not only were they there to care for me, but they were there to care for those that were caring for me. And so again, just another reassurance that this was the right place. And so over time, it was family. I mean, we came in the doors. This sounds crazy to say, but I remember walking through those doors and feeling so much comfort because I knew these people knew us. They knew stories about our kids. We knew stories about their kids. It just became family to us. And so when I walked through those doors, instead of that impending doom, that dreaded feeling you feel, I would see their smiling faces and it would immediately just give me comfort. And so we started treatment. I had to go through several weeks of chemo. And I did chemo about every 2 weeks. And I think I had 16 treatments, or maybe it was 8 treatments, 16 weeks. And then after that, I had surgery. And then being triple negative, I was told that I would have to have the radiation following that. And so, you know, you spend so much time here. So everyone really does become like family. But I remember going through chemo, my first several rounds where I was expecting the worst, I actually did really well. But then my second round of chemo where I thought, okay, this is going to be a breeze because I did so well with the first one, I really had a lot of side effects. And so at that point, I realized not only is this a great place where, you know, my doctors are treating me well, they're concerned with my family members, but they're also providing me additional options for these side effects for other things. And so I was able to, you know, go to the chiropractor and do acupuncture and things like that that really helped manage some of those horrible side effects that you can get when you're going through treatment. So, and so that was great as well. But we got through the chemo and all of that and had really great success with that. And then I had my surgery and then I went in for radiation. And so again, most of this time my husband was with me. So, you know, I was always kind of distracted by him and talking with him. But toward the end, I had radiation so frequently, it was like every single day. And so a lot of times I would just go by myself. Nobody could go in, obviously. And so I would go by myself. And I remember walking through the doors by myself, how it felt really weird, but it also gave me the opportunity to really take in what was happening there and to look at people's faces and, you know, to smile at people who probably really didn't feel like smiling that day. And so I loved those moments by myself, even though they didn't feel great at first. I really got to kind of see everybody and what they were going through and what this place is bringing to them. But that also reminds me of sitting in the waiting room and hearing stories. And that was when I really was able to listen. And I'll never forget, I remember there was a gentleman one day and he started telling his story, and there were so many people in the waiting room. By the time he got a little bit into his story, every one of us had stopped what we were doing and we were just focused on him, because he was so full of just spirit and life, and but because his story was just amazing. He had been to other facilities and he was stage 4. He had basically been told, get your affairs in order, just that there's no hope kind of thing. And someone told him about CTCA, and he got into CTCA and he was doing great. He was telling us about the success he had had. I forget his timeline and his numbers, and I wouldn't want to misquote them, but he told us how long, he had been in treatment, and then how long it had been since he had come to CTCA in Noonan, and that, he had defied the odds, basically what they had told him to prepare for. Here he was, and he was doing great, thanks to the treatment that he had gotten at CTCA. So I was so happy that I was able to hear his story. But even after that, I would hear more and more stories about that. And so I finished my treatment, and unfortunately, a year and a half later, I believe, my father-in-law was then diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And I called him immediately and said, I know the place for you. You've got to come here. He lived in this very small town in North Carolina called Robbinsville. And so he said, okay, I'll come and go to an appointment there. And so, I won't share his story. I'll just tell you that his situation was great as well. His team also then became like our family. He had a bone marrow transplant at CTCA, and if I remember correctly, he was either the first one or very early on to even have that done there. And it was a great success. And so he is now over 5 years out as well. Just had his appointments not long ago, and everything looked great. He said it went really well, and now they've kind of spaced out his appointments so he doesn't have to come as often. So it was so great to be able to refer him to a place that had become like family and second home for my husband and I. And now we were able to share that and that experience with him. And same thing for him. When he had, certain things going on, he was able to go to the chiropractor. I think he did that quite often. And just, be able to get treatment and relief for things that come along with those side effects. So that's kind of my story, a little bit of my father-in-law's story. Just such a wonderful experience. I will say that the last day of my radiation, I live locally. So when I came out those doors of my final appointment for radiation, of course, my friends and family were all standing there, but I remember scanning that crowd of friends and family and seeing so many different faces of people that I had met from the time I walked in the door, from when my head was swimming and just learning that I had cancer, until walking out that day. And it was just different relationships I've made along the way, and friendships that some I still have and still get to talk to. So it was just an amazing experience. I am so grateful for the fact that everything was able to happen in one location. I could just go there and know that all of my treatment was going to happen under that roof and in that place. And, of course, to know that my friend was there and she was close by and she was always there for me. Oh my goodness. We have said so many times, I don't know what I would have done if she had not been working there, because she was our mind and the brains behind a lot of things, because we couldn't think. And so because she was there, and her boss was so kind to let her step away sometimes and just come check on me, and she would pop in and be able to, we're sitting there trying to remember something the doctors asked us, and she would walk in and say, oh, it was this, so that was great too. And just to be able to see her face there, and some other friends that worked there as well. So fantastic experience. It's such a tough thing when you're going through that. Um, and, to hear that word and to know that you're going to be faced with those treatments that are really tough. And to know that, your life is changing. I remember, having to tell my family and my children, and that was the hardest thing. I remember my son telling me that he would lay in his bed by himself at night and cry, thinking, mom's not going to make it. And so to be able to, turn such a really difficult time into a time where you felt comfort and love basically by the team that was around you, was such a great thing for me. And there was just so much to offer there that made this more bearable. And I remember going into one of my every day is you're facing, will this come back, or whatever. But I love being to this point and being able to look back and go, wow, it's been a journey. And that is really an understatement. It's been a journey, but it's been a journey that has taught me so much about myself and about the people around me. And it's been definitely worth fighting. And I can't say enough of how blessed